Today, we have a really exciting topic. We are going to be studying how differential equations, specifically ordinary differential equations, which we covered a bit on previous streams, can model the zombie apocalypse. So, I'm going to be keeping a notepad document on the side where I'm going to be saving the links. I'm making that notepad document right now. And also a file. So, zombie apocalypse project. This is for a school project, but I am doing research on stream. And we're going to do sources.txt. All right. Can we look at the full PDF? We can. So that means we are going to save this as a source. All right. Oh, we can get the paper to be read aloud automatically. Okay.
Equations of the End, Teaching Mathematical Modeling Using the Zombie Apocalypse. Eric T., Lofgren 1 *, Christy M., Collins 2, Tara C., Smith 3, and Reed A., Cartwright 4. 1 Network Dynamics and Simulation Science Laboratory, Biocomplexity Institute of Virginia Tech, Blacksburg, Virginia, 24061.
Can we skip ahead here?
3 for school abstract.
Yes.
Mathematical models of infectious diseases are a valuable tool in understanding the mechanisms and patterns of disease transmission. It is, however, a difficult subject to teach, requiring both.
Is it just going to keep pausing? I guess I can read it aloud. That would probably be better. Mathematical models of infectious diseases are a valuable tool in understanding the mechanisms and patterns of disease transmission. It is, however, a difficult subject to teach, requiring both mathematical expertise and extensive subject matter knowledge of a variety of disease systems. In this article, we explore several uses of zombie epidemics to make mathematical modeling and infectious diseases epidemiology more accessible to public health professionals, students, and the general public. We further introduce a web-based simulation, White Z, that can be deployed in classrooms to allow students to explore models before implementing them. In our experience, zombie epidemics are familiar, approachable, flexible, and an ideal way to introduce basic concepts of infectious disease epidemiology. So I'm going to just take a look at this. So this is the mathematical model. Oh, and we have bunnies. And then we have the paper. Interesting. So this is what our population looks like. If there are no zombies that can go and infect people. But if we go and start increasing the infection rate, everybody eventually becomes a zombie. Interesting. So let's assume that not all zombies go and infect people. All right, so it looks like vaccinations go and slow down the spread of the virus, but still everybody still gets it. All right, more zombies means faster spread. But if we have 1,000 dead zombies, how's that affecting stuff? It's making the disease spread slower with more dead zombies. Zombie decay rate. Interesting. Ooh, okay. So at a certain decay rate, people live and don't die off. Incubation time. Ooh. So with really low incubation time, this doesn't seem that accurate. Like, look, 0 and then really. Why does high incubation time look the same as really low incubation time? And then really low incubation time does not look like 0 incubation time. All right, we have a vaccination rate as well. Wait, people start dying faster? Oh, this blue curve is the vaccinated, and the this is the susceptible. Hunting rate. Interesting. So you can go and hunt zombies. So this looks like a 5 parameter system, and we can go and play around with this a little more, but I think I'm going to just post the link to chat. So if anybody else wants to play around with it a little bit more, there are 0 people on chat anyways. But still, I think it's time to move on to the paper part. Mathematical modeling is an invaluable tool in the study of infectious diseases, with a long history of providing insights into patterns of infectious diseases transmissions such as herd immunity and periodic epidemics. These theoretical representations allow researchers to explore questions that would be empirically infeasible for financial, practical, or ethical reasons. These models have found utility in public health and policy spanning pandemic preparedness, vaccine development and deployment, and intervention evaluation. Models can also provide advice to decision makers during emergent epidemics, such as the 2014 West Africa Ebola epidemic. So I think I guess we don't really have to focus on those sources they reference. But two chief challenges exists in teaching mathematical modeling to students in biology or public health. The first is teaching the concept of mathematical modeling using approachable mathematical techniques, so that students may develop an intuition for the subject. This allows them to interact with models as they encounter them in the literature and to gain a solid foundation before moving on to advanced topics. The second, equally important challenge is the use of a working example disease that allows students to explore the design, implementation, and analysis of mathematical models without needing to acquire the expertise on a daunting range of pathogens. Here we discuss the incorporation of zombie epidemics into three different introductory programs by the author, a 1 day workshop during a conference led by EL, I don't know who EL is, a full semester undergraduate course taught by RC, and a public outreach event directed by KC. I know who KFC is, Kentucky Fried Chicken, but I don't know who ELRC or KC. So it looks like this paper went along with a semester long course and a 1 day workshop. A brief history of zombies. The classical zombie is thought to have originated in Haiti as a legend associated with a voodoo culture. The first feature length film was White Zombie, released in 1932, which told the story of a woman visiting Haiti and becoming transformed into a zombie by a voodoo practitioner. The modern zombie first appeared in George Romero's 1968 movie, Night of the Living Dead. Rather than the possessed zombie of Haitian influence, this new type of zombie was a reanimated corpse intended on eating human flesh. This type of ambling slow zombie brought back to life by radiation or other means, ghouls of Fallout 4, typified popular culture for approximately 30 years. With the 2002 release of 28 Days Later, the zombie genre was given new life with the invention of the fast zombie. Zombies that move slowly or zombies that move fast? Oh. Unlike the Romero zombies, these were not truly dead, but rather infected with the virus that quickly turned victims into fast moving, violent creatures. Zombieism as infectious disease has shown up repeatedly since and prominent featuring in the Walking Dead graphic novel and television series. The recent surge of popularity has generated a variety of zombie unnatural histories consistent with the diversity studies in infectious disease biology that can be caused by viruses, bacteria, prions, or fungi. Fungi? I'm a little curious about this one. Source 24. The Last of Us. Oh, yeah, that's a fungi virus. Yeah, that's terrifying. That is really terrifying. Okay. Well, let's close that. And let's think of this rabbit zombie as our model instead. Instead of that terrifying fungi zombie, or even vectors. What is a vector? And incubation periods can range from practically non existent to indefinite. Oh, we missed a paragraph. The fungal scenarios are based on the real life cordyceps genus of an endoparasitic fungi, which infects insects and dramatically changes their behavior as it replaces host tissue. In zombie fiction, the most common mode of pathogen transmission is bite, But zombieism can also be transmission via air, body fluids, water, or even vectors, which I don't know what a vector is. And an incubation period can range from practically non existent to indefinite. So, why model zombies? The popularity of zombie fiction makes it an obvious topic for the introduction of epidemiological models into the classroom. First, no prior knowledge of a biological system is necessary, as students can become experts over a night of movies and may find discussions of zombie outbreaks more approachable. One of the authors have examined epidemiology of zombies in a similar manner as a way of facilitating discussions about preparing for emerging pathogens to a wide non scientific audience. Second, due to the diversity of unnatural zombie histories in popular culture, uh, instructors have the flexibility to cover different models and processes in epidemiology without deviation from the zombie mythos. Instructors can implement dense density dependent transmission, frequency dependent transmission. Oh, that's not one word, that's two separate words. So they can implement density dependent transmissions. They can also implement frequency dependent transmissions or environmental transmissions, maybe a latency period, asymptomatic carriers, etc., etc., etc. Beyond that, zombie stories involve a number of interventions such as quarantines, culling, and social distancing, the effects of which can be explored in advanced models. This flexibility allows for a wide range of classrooms discussions about modeling infectious diseases without requiring a change in disease context every time a new concept in modeling is introduced. This is an essential feature for the teaching of modeling as it reduces the number of variables being changed and allows students to see changes in zombie models as an entirely the result of altering the in model structure and not switching between systems. It also promotes a back and forth on how to model pathogens rather than accepting that a new particular disease has a canonical model form. Zombie outbreaks lend themselves well to new hypothetical scenarios, for new interventions for the fundamental questions of whether the zombies are the slow, shambling creatures of Romero's work. Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou zombie? Or the swift hunters of many modern films. In our expertise, students are much more willing to use their imaginations when modeling zombie epidemics than for real life diseases, where they are often focused on learning the true model. Epidemiology educators may use zombie epidemics as a good starting point to engage in conversation with the public about experiences, real life diseases, conversations about good health practices, good hand washing, or staying at home from work or school when getting sick. Yeah, you wouldn't want to go and infect your entire school with the zombie plague. That would be bad. Although the scenarios are fictitious in their focus, students often encounter many of the same questions as asked when modeling real-world infectious diseases. Are there interventions we have not thought of? Are our assumptions about the natural history of the disease correct? Does being ill change host behavior? Encouraging a natural exploration of these questions helps support a more critical design of models from the outset and a more contemplative review of modeling encountered in the literature. And I forgot to post a link to this paper in the chat, so I'm going to post a link right here. How far are we through this paper? We are almost a third of the way through the paper. So interesting and riveting material. So, a gentle introduction to mathematical modeling. This is their one-day workshop, by the way. Real-life lessons from the living dead in a one-day workshop, most recently presented at the American Public Health Association's annual conference in 2014. Its audience was public health professionals, most of whom have encountered mathematical models before but had little or no experience with their design or analysis. The workshop was structured in a hybrid format, with introductory lectures followed by a guided, hands on practice with coding and implementation. Each lecture featured one or several video clips illustrating the concepts being discussed as it applies to models. E.g., what does e.g. mean? Example? Or as in? As in a discussion between the characters in The Dawn of Dead about how the time it takes between someone being bitten and becoming dangerous, or the Zombieland's narrator discussion of the rules that govern his behavior while introducing agent-based models. Because the participants were largely non-modelers from other public health professions, an emphasis was placed on the critical evaluation of models in the literature. What assumptions do they make? When these assumptions are tenable? When the parameters estimation come from? Etc. The course built up from a simpler SZR model, where the population is divided up into susceptible, zombie, or removed class. Somebody who's recovered from being a zombie or, has died and are not animated at all. To a much more complex model involving survivors finding shelter and fighting back against zombies. I guess you could also have vaccinated individuals. I brought a cup of green tea in here, so I'm going to take a break while we look and ponder at this picture they have provided. This is a nice cup of green tea. So in Model A, we see susceptible moving to zombie, moving to removed. And that's the only direction of flow you have. You cannot have a zombie become a susceptible person. You cannot have somebody who's removed become a zombie. You cannot have somebody who's removed become susceptible. Interesting. So that's the SZR model. We also have a second model here, which looks like an SZR, but with 3 additional categories you can go into. The H, the E, and the K. All right, and we have labels here. So, compartments for individuals who have been infected but not yet turned into zombies. So, somebody who's infected but not yet turned into a zombie is in this box right here, this E box. And susceptible individuals who have found shelter are in H. And zombies who were killed during interaction with susceptible individuals are in K. So interesting. You can imagine having people who are vaccinated actually help a lot more with the killing of the zombies because they're not susceptible. So if they get bitten or something or get, blood splattered, they're not going to die. So the hands-on portion of the workshop continued with the same emphasis on critical evaluation, while the students were given a chance to implement 2 models on their own: the basic zombie epidemic model introduced during the lecture, and a worked example model from the literature. The code for every compartmental model used during the workshop, as well as the hands-on section, was made available in Python and are at the workshop's GitHub repository. Let me just go and get that link and post it here. So this is the open source code. Both these workshops and the course discussed below primarily uses differential equation models, which allow for many of the same insights as more advanced differential equation models, but require no more than a high school level of understanding of algebra. Further discussion focused on many of the problems encountered while implementing models, such as balancing a desire for realism while computational mathematical with computation and mathematical tractability, or the sensitivity of results for unexpected parameters to try to give students an understanding of when they should seek the assistance of a modeling specialist. This was meant to demystify what that specialist does as to combat the black box mentality that sometimes exists about mathematical modeling, where models are given only a cursory evaluation by subject matter experts because of the presence of equations and their results accepted without critique. Okay, so the semester long course, which only covers zombie infections. Huh. And it's got 100 students, so that's pretty popular. All right. So they covered island zombies, where there's an island where the outbreak occurs and a sister island, and migration is possible between them. Leper zombies, where the zombie outbreak co-occurs with an outbreak of leprosy, and zombies infected with leprosy decay at a faster rate. Interesting. So the zombies can get infected with another virus that attacks the zombies. Red-headed zombies, only certain people, genetically redheads, become zombies when they're infected. Everyone else dies. Vector zombies. Oh, okay, so that's what a vector means. So zombieism is transmitted by an insect, frequently dependent transmissions, and reservoir zombies. So zombieism is transmitted by contact with an animal reservoir. And that's a density dependent transmission. And we're about halfway through the paper. Uh, Once we get to public health education and outreach, we're going to take a short break because I don't want the green tea to stain my teeth. So I'm going to go and wash my mouth out with some fluoride. So the group developed their models throughout the semester, writing 2 drafts and then a final paper. Students were encouraged to embellish as they saw fit. For the first 5-page draft, the group had to outline their scenario as defined a suitable differential equations model for the transmissions of zombieism. They had to explicitly define their assumptions, variables, and parameters, and write such that someone who was not taking their class could understand what they were doing. For the second 8-page draft, the group updated their model to include natural birth and death of survivors and hunting of zombies. They extended their existing work by analyzing their models to determine possibility, possible equilibrium values and the conditions under which zombieism increases or decreases. This analytic consisted of analytical solutions, and simulations conducted in Excel. A spreadsheet program like Excel makes it possible for students with no programming experience to implement recursion and visualize the results. For the final 15-page paper, the group extended their drafts by fitting their models into the dataset provided by RC, estimating the model parameters and predicting the future of their scenarios. The datasets were designed only to partially match scenarios to make students think about why their real data and models did not agree. The students fit their models using the Excel simulations they constructed in Part 2. Okay, and they were used by groups to optimize the fit of their models to the data. So it looks like we have 5 15-page papers we can also use as sources on this exact topic from this course. So I think we're going to dive into that a little bit later. But groups also presented their findings to the class throughout the semester. One group from each scenario presented the results when draft 1 and draft 2 were due, and the remaining groups presented when their final paper was due. All papers were shared on the internal class website, and students were encouraged to revise their projects based on ideas found in their work of other groups, both in the scenario and in other scenarios. As part of the final exam, students were tested on whether they learned about each of these 5 scenarios. Okay. Do we have access to these papers? If it was on their internal class website, I don't think we do. All right, so it looks like we have one viewer. Welcome, welcome. Alto. So I'm going to post the link to this journal in the chat so you can read it. And then I can go and post the simulation here. And we are looking at models of the zombie apocalypse. But I need to take a really quick break, and then I'll be right back. All right, I am back. So we are about halfway, a little over halfway through the paper now, which is pretty darn good. And we're going to keep on reading, and we're going to finish the paper. And then we're going to end the stream there. And then we're going to start up another stream immediately, where I'm going to be covering graph theory. But I want these two streams as separate. You can see the stream, you can see the stream. Are the comments getting in the way of the paper? Now they are not. The zombie scenario is an engaging and fun way of teaching immunity, vaccination, and basic epidemiology, not only to public health professionals or college students, but also to younger students at science focused outreach events. Chemical transference, or a paper and pencil, are standard school activities used to simulate the spread of the disease. The Biocomplexity Institute of Virginia Tech has created a viral transmission simulation activity known as the virus tracker. Let's take a look at this. Well, I guess we can't take a look at that. That includes a sophisticated visualization and analysis of the epidemic spread. Virus tracker simulates the spread of a virus and the critical role of vaccination in combating a disease outbreak, and involves a game host who controls various aspects of the outbreak, maintains a record of the player states, collects statistics on the player states, and provides visualizations of the outbreak's progress. Infected players can transmit the dreaded but imaginary zombie plague virus to their contacts. Gameplay is deepened by the opportunity for players to vaccinate others. The virus mutates under control of the game host so that regular revaccination is needed to maintain immunity. Players answer questions related to public health correctly to obtain a vaccine they can distribute and are awarded points for both vaccinations and for infecting other players. Interesting, okay. A variety of events utilizing Virus Tracker have been extremely well received, including the 2014 National Boy Scout Jamboree, which involved 29,000 infected players. The most current version of Virus Tracker is a game that can be played with address labels and or an app in the App Store. This is really interesting to me because I have to have a interactable um, game to play with people. Not game. Some sort of interaction with the audience during my presentation. So the dual approach in play is meant to allow any age group with any level of technological sophistication or logistical support to be accommodated. Young children and adults without smartphones are the key user for label-based games. Let's see if nope, this one also does not work. This dual approach allows, for example, a pair of siblings, one with a smartphone and another without, to compete with each other to infect or vaccinate participants, generating excitement about the game and, as a result, the epidemiological concepts behind it. A version of this game has also been developed for use in middle school and high school classrooms. In this version, players are given a barcode address label to represent their infections with the virus. The first person to be infected, patient 0, can also choose how many others to infect and so on until all bands are accounted for. Each game kit includes a scanner so that the barcodes can be scanned and linked together in a database to show a visualization of the resulting transmission tree, as well as other statistics about the epidemic. Each participant can find his or her place in the tree and trace the transmissions back to find patient 0. The game kit itself is free and includes the needed software scanners, barcodes, and instruction manuals, and suggested curricular materials. Alright, so it seems like most of this paper is just about communication of the concepts that they covered in this one model up here. So I think we need to find another paper to read after this. So in order to facilitate the transition of our experiences using zombie epidemics to teach infectious diseases, we have developed a web-based application. Yep, we already saw that. Which allows for an interactive exploration of a mathematical model of a disease, and is a starting point for introducing zombie epidemics into classwork. At its core, white Z contains a modified SVEIR differential equation model, integrating using the Runge-Kutta method. What is the Runge-Kutta method? That doesn't give me a link. Students use sliders to adjust disease parameters and the makeup of the population at time zero. The resulting epidemic is visualized by a graph that plots the number of individuals in each category versus time. This graph updates every tenth of a second so students can see the effect of their parameters change in real time. All of this is achieved by performing the calculations in the student's web browser. There is no background, and the students only host the static files needed to find white Z. All right. We refer to white Z's model as SVEZR. I'm going to just say Svezr, because that sounds fun, to reflect the involvement of zombieism. This model was chosen to allow instructors the flexibility to start with simpler models and expose students to more complicated dynamics by enabling additional features. The Svezr model contains 5 classes of individuals that interact in a pre-described way. Individual survivors, S, come into contact with infected zombies, Z, become exposed, E, to the disease at a rate of beta. Exposed individuals become zombies with an incubation rate of alpha, and zombies survive for a period of time before succumbing with a rate Y. Is that phi? Gamma. It's gamma. The decay, accidents, etc., being permanently removed are from the population. This model also contains vaccinated individuals who do not become zombies even if they are exposed. The vaccination rate is zeta. In addition to this typical epidemiological model, Svezr allows for Sve individuals to destroy zombies during interactions at a rate of V. Or is that delta? Is it phi or delta? It's delta. It's lowercase delta. Several common epidemiological models can be modeled within white Z by setting only specific parameters to non-zero. For example, if beta and gamma are non-zero, white Z simulates an SZR analog of the classic susceptible infection removed model. Making a non-zero introduces a latency period, Cesar. These models and more like them are fully described in Appendix 1. A sample student worksheet appropriate for a standalone lecture introduces mathematical modeling is introduced in Appendix 2. So I'm going to take a look at that paper, the worksheet, because it looks like I might do something similar to my or to it in my lecture. Actually, I'm not doing a lecture. I'm doing a YouTube video. So I'm gonna read this paper, and then I'm gonna do a YouTube video on it. So models of infectious diseases play an important role in our understanding of how pathogens spread through populations. Important concepts like herd immunity and critical vaccination thresholds, the role of social structure in the spread of diseases, and the potential effectiveness of many public health interventions can be easily demonstrated using mathematical and computational models. Treating mathematical models as more than a simple black box from which results emerge is essential for critical engagement with infectious disease literature. As such, it is important that students of biology, epidemiology, and public health be conservant in their use, interpretation, and limitations, whether or not they intend to use models in their own work. We have described the use of zombie epidemics to introduce fundamental concepts in infectious diseases, modeling, and epidemiology in three different settings with students at very different levels. In each setting, we sought to use familiar cultural references pointed in order to help students engage with these concepts behind infectious disease modeling without the barrier of extensive disease specific expertise. This approach is not intended to be an endpoint in the students' education about epidemiology, but rather it brings the teachings of infectious diseases models into line with how biological, epidemiological, and public health is often taught, with subject matter expertise being acquired after or alongside general methodological sophistication rather than acting as an implementation of it. So I'm thinking I'm going to leave out, but I'm still going to use as a consideration a lot of the material they use to go and talk about how they're communicating what they're talking about. I do like how they talked about different types of zombie epidemics, and I think I will include that in the video. And I'm definitely going to talk about the two different models they have, the Caesar and the SCR. So that's going to be interesting. All right, so we have notes, sources, and supplemental materials. Okay. So we got supplemental materials. Which is also not loading. So that's fine. Well, we got one paper out of the way. So this is paper 1, SZR. So susceptible, zombie removed. And then Caesar. He was Caesar. Sfezer. Okay. Okay, it's the Sfezer model. Sfezer. And different zombie diseases. So different zombie diseases. A interactable zombie model. And outreach programs. All right, so what is paper 2? have in store for us? Let's find paper 2. Um, this is annoying. So I cannot read this whole book, so that's not a source I can use. Alright, this research study uses mathematical models to analyze and depict scientific battle situations and the outcome of the zombie apocalypse. The original model that predicted warfare were the Lanchester models. The zombie apocalypse were fictional expansions upon mathematical models to use and examine infectious diseases. In this paper, I analyzed and compared different mathematical models by examining each model's set of assumptions and the impact of changing in variables on population classes. The purpose of this study was to understand the basics of discrete dynamic systems and determine the similarities between the imaginary and real models. The Lanchester models that were examined were the area aimed model and the aimed fire model with the susceptible removed model and the susceptible infected zombie removed model. Trade the relations between different populations classes during the zombie apocalypse. All right. Oh, this is 40 pages long. So I'm going to put this in my notes. This looks like a pretty good source. Looks like it was written by a student to graduate. We already read the abstract. Um, I want to glean new information. So let's start here. First of all, can everybody see that? Yes, they can. The Lanchester models are systems of differential equations used to describe aspects of conventional warfare. So, paper 2. So, this is the link. This is the link. So, paper 1 and paper 2. So, Lanchester, war models. So, model. And these are systems of differential equations used to describe aspects of conventional warfare, which are wars without the use of chemical, biological, or nuclear weaponry. These models are renowned for their simplicity and are often featured in introductory courses of mathematical modeling. Lanchester models were derived. I'm so glad I picked this zombie apocalypse as a topic. This is riveting. These models are renowned for their simplicity and are often featured in an introductory course of mathematical modeling. The Lanchester models were derived from Lanchester's famous law, which were simple to understand and eased the transition into more complex topics of mathematical modeling. And I know I have. This is my first session of research on this. Like anybody who's watched the stream from the beginning knows just as much about zombie apocalypse models as I do. Well, I do know some differential equations, so I guess I have an advantage on that front. But still, I should, I guess I should post this link to chat here so anybody watching can go and read along with me. His most renowned equation was the square law, which predicted outcomes of battles within the aimed fire model. The other, lesser known Lanchester equation examined was the linear law, which was used within the area aimed model. So we're going to take a note of the area aimed model. Area aimed model. These models have vast amounts of research and publications which analyzed the Lanchester equations and explained the background, applications, and flaws within the models in an understandable manner. Their simplicity allowed for hand calculations, which provided me the opportunity to understand the relationship between the variables using written methods rather than the use of computer programming. So, first used in 1915. The Lanchester was born in 1886. Worked in the automobile industry, wrote a book, and introduced equations to describe aerial warfare, and used it for battle equations. The differential equations were used in the differential equations used in both the area aimed and area aimed fire models describes the outcome of two battling armies as functions of time and were dependent on the relative attacker and defender strengths. The relative strengths of an army were contingent upon which model was used. The aimed fire model uses, or the area aimed model. For the Lanchester model to accurately describe the outcomes of a battle, the model required specific assumptions to be met. The assumptions required for each model limited the type of battle which the Lanchester model could accurately describe. Listed below are the general assumptions used in both the Lanchester models. No possibility of withdrawal, no significant differences, no possibility of withdrawal. That seems like it would be bad in a war model, but it seems like it would be very good in a zombie model because that's what we want. We don't want the zombies to ever retreat. No significant differences between the offensive and defensive armies. Homogeneous forces were engaged in combat. That's not good because the zombies, they're doing melee, and not just melee, but unarmed melee. While humans, they can do any weapon that humans can use. I mean, they could be doing melee to melee, but I wouldn't suggest it. I mean, hand to hand combat probably sounds like a bad idea. I think they tried that in High School of the Dead in episode 1. Did not work out well. The two forces were within weapons reach of the opposing army, and the rates at which that also doesn't work out well for zombies. So the rates at which the armies were reduced was known and held constant throughout the duration of the battle. To examine the Lanchester models, I suppose there was a battle between two forces, labeled as the X-Men and the Y-Men, and that all the assumptions for the general Lanchester model were met. The variables used in both the aimed fire model and the area aimed model were labeled below. The fighting efficiency coefficients were numerical values used to represent the respective army's ability to fight, which included the average skills of the soldiers and resources available to them, as well as other factors. So, fighting efficiency and the number of people at a certain time. Interesting. See, the aimed fire model describes battle scenarios in which the exact location of the enemy was known, which allows soldiers the ability to immediately shift their fire to a new target after their previous target has been eliminated. The aim-fire model used the Lanchester's model most renowned law, the square law. They still haven't told us what the square law is, though, to depict the outcomes of a battle. Within the aimed fire model, an army's fighting strength was equivalent to enemies fighting efficient coefficient times the square the number of the enemy's units. Okay. An army's fighting strength was equivalent to the enemy's fighting efficiency coefficient times the square of the number of enemy units. So, usually when something is squared, or one thing is times another, we're talking about how much they interact with each other. So when this is being squared, we're talking about how much the soldiers are interacting with themselves times their efficiency coefficient. Sounds a bit odd. Well, the square law describes the change in an army to be negative of the opposing army's fighting strength. To obtain a single differential equation that calculates the change of both armies, I combined the two equations above and integrated. And they show some math, which is actually pretty interesting. Hence, we have Lanchester's square law, which was used to determine the outcome of the aim-fire model. So the next Lanchester model I examined was the area-aimed model, which used the linear law to explain warfare. The area-aimed model describes battle scenarios in which the exact location of each army was undisclosed. Therefore, armies were aware of only the general location of their enemies and lacked the immediate feedback featured within the aim-fire model. The area-aimed model assumed that the fire from the surviving units would be distributed uniformly over the general area rather than focus on a specific target. The change of an army was described as the negative fighting efficiency coefficient of the opposing side times both army numbers of forces, which was illustrated in the differential equations below. Okay. Lanchester's linear law was achieved by the combination of two original differential equations to include both variables for the x-men and the y-men. Hence, we have Lanchester's linear law, which was used to determine the winner, the losses, and duration for the war, the area and model. The Lanchester model depict the real-life situation of warfare, but differential equations was to be used to predict the outcome of fictional scenarios such as the zombie apocalypse. Now we get to how they discuss the zombies, because zombies can't use ranged weapons. Alright, we don't want the background. We already read the background. Skip. 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 We already covered the SCR model. So we already covered all this. Oh, don't want to do that. All right, so they didn't cover the sizer model as much in the other paper. So I think we're going to look at that in depth here. So it adds another population class and the possibility of an infected carrier labeled as infected. The infection period begins after a human was infected with the zombie disease and ended when the infected individual has died. Um, During the infection period, the infection could have died of natural causes or infected other susceptible humans. The model includes the general variables and assumptions as listed in equation 3, as well as a few assumptions listed below. After a success, after a success, bleh, The assumption we're making is after a susceptible human is infected with the zombie virus, the susceptible becomes a member of the infected class. So, suppose there was a battle such that one side could convert soldiers to fight for the opposing side. Instead of the two forces being mutually exclusive, the soldiers would transition between the classes shown in the zombie models. Rather than only being categorized as alive or dead, the soldiers had the possibility of becoming the enemy that they had fought against originally, which would be the case when modeling a zombie apocalypse. It might be possible for these battle situations to become a reality, depending on the advancement of brainwashing and manipulation, or even the possibility of a zombie apocalypse. I hypothesize that there will be multiple similarities between the Lanchester and zombie models because the use of differential equations to explain the relationship between classes in discrete dynamical systems. After completing the study, I gained a better understanding of the diversity in mathematical modeling systems and the differential equations used within the models. So now we put the two models together. So there was a total of four models which were analyzed and cross referenced within this study. Each model was analyzed individually by examining its assumptions and variables in relation to the differential classes. The results derived from the models were then compared to its sister model to determine which variables yielded the greater effect for each model. Therefore, the aimed fire model and the area aimed model were first analyzed individually and then compared to determine the impact of the fighting efficiency coefficient and the number of forces, or the winner, the losers, and the time of the battle. For the zombie model, we examined those individually, then compared to analyze the various variable impacts of the differential classes populations. Finally, the general aspects of the Lanchester model were compared in the zombie model, which included the subject matter specific of some specificity of assumptions, method of solving, and types of differential equations used. To understand the implications of the Lanchester model, I solved the equation. All right, so we went over this. All right, so they did a little bit of model analysis here, which is interesting. So they're looking at the total annihilation to occur. So they have a total annihilation analysis. So I can put that in notes. So It depends on the fighting efficiency and the number of people. So if there's a greater number of so we suppose the fighting efficiency, the fighting power of one, and then we go and look at the win condition for the other. So interesting. And then they solve for it, and then they say the fighting efficiency must be this, right? So if both forces are annihilated, there's a model for that. So total annihilation of one side. Is one side always the zombies and one side is always the hmm. All right. They had a sensitivity analysis as well. All right. So an increase in the birth rate did not present an effect upon the outcome of the zombie apocalypse. So it looks like this is all the same stuff we read about in the last paper, except they're discussing the sensitivity for each. Okay. We got some bots. Oh, I'm pretty hungry. So they did a sensitivity analysis. I'm just zooming through this very fast because I think we have all the information we need to make a fairly good video on this. Like, I can go back and look at the sensitivity analysis a bit more to try to shove in a bit of information, but I've only got like 10 minutes to discuss all this. Now they show pictures of all their models and do all their sources. So it looks like what we skipped over was a bunch of their sensitivity analysis stuff. So a bunch of math. So we could just take the results from that math pretty easily. So I'd say that was a pretty good paper. We'll definitely use that. Do we want to use this one? Okay, now they're talking about equilibria here. All right, so we can skip the abstract. So this does not seem like a very useful paper for us, because we already have all the information that we need from this. Population dynamics based approach. Hmm. So population dynamics. All right, so it looks like they're still using the same SCR model. So same exact model. So we've seen two papers so far that don't go and give us any more information about the topic, but we did have a good good first two papers, which I think gave us all the information we actually needed for the video. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the stream right here, and I'm going to say this has been a successful research session. So we've gotten all the information I needed for the paper. So that's good. Not paper. I'm not writing a paper on this. I'm doing a video. All right, so thank you for watching.